Hello, good afternoon, welcome back to Premier League Dad. It's the Game Week 21 review show. This is where we'll be taking a look back at a massive set of results in this midweek round of Premier League fixtures and how my predictions stacked up against the actual results. Let's take a look. So first up was Brentford 2, Manchester City 2. What an unbelievable turnaround that was for Brentford, by the way. And it just confirms what we talked about in the match preview, that it's such a tough place to go, Brentford. It really is, and you can't switch off. And I'm dreading Liverpool going there this weekend. I think I called this one 2-1 to City, didn't I? I mean, I think Brentford was always going to be a tough place to go, and I think I said in the preview that I fully expect Brentford to cause Man City problems. However, I expect City to get it over the line in the end. And if not for that 93rd minute equaliser from Christian Norgard, they just might. It would have been another result spot on. But a really, really big point for Brentford. I actually thought it was a pretty even game, and I think on the balance of play, a point was probably the fair result in the end. City, of course, will be absolutely gutted at the way that it's ended, being 2-0 up and throwing it away right at the last minute. I think it was 92nd minute or 93rd minute that Christian Norgard gets that header. And maybe Ortega's a little bit disappointed that he doesn't keep that one out as well. But I don't think City can have too many complaints. They did take the foot off it at 2-0 and they let Brentford back in the game. There's a couple of chances where I think City will be gutted that they didn't put the game to bed maybe a bit earlier. For City, they've got a trip to Portman Road at 4:30 on Sunday. That one's a potential banana skin, isn't it? I mean, it's one that City absolutely have to win. Brentford now still only have one win in 8 against Southampton away, of course, which was last week. But it does feel like they're turning a corner in terms of their performances. And you have to say that's going to give them massive confidence going into the game against Liverpool this weekend. Next up, Chelsea 2, Bournemouth 2. That was one of them games where it was absolutely everything that I hoped it would be. And we got the scoreline right as well, 2-2. Something just told me there'd be goals in this game, and it was fantastic to watch, wasn't it? I mean, the first goal from Cole Palmer is unbelievable. Absolutely incredible finish. Sits the keeper down and passes it into the net. Just a fantastic goal from a wonderful player that everyone's enjoying watching right now. And then Robert Sanchez kind of causing chaos for Chelsea at the back. Just underlining why they desperately need a goalkeeper to do anything meaningful in the Premier League. They're going to need a goalkeeper to be in the top 4 or to certainly to challenge. He passes the ball out straight to a Bournemouth player. I think it was to Kluivert. And Kluivert ends up hitting the post. They miss an open net. Hits the post. And then within 15 seconds, the ball's up the other end of the pitch. Nicholas Jackson runs basically the full length of the pitch and smashes it against the outside of the post. So Chelsea go in 1-0 up at the break, but you're always thinking Bournemouth can work their way back into this. And obviously, second half, they come out, they get a penalty. I think it was Semenyo breaking into the box, clear foul, Kluivert steps up, 1-1. And then Semenyo, what a strike that is. I sort of tweeted midweek actually that said there's something of the Sadio Mane's about him, and I kind of get where people are coming from, that he'll go to a top club. Not that Bournemouth aren't a great club, of course, but he'll go to like a Arsenal, lots of rumours linking him with Arsenal, lots of rumours linking him to Liverpool, of course. But I could see Semenyo going to a top club and really kicking on and being a really fantastic wide player. And he showcased that perfectly at Stamford Bridge. That finish was top quality, right out of the top drawer. And again, similar to the Brentford and City game, you're thinking Bournemouth have just done enough. It's the latter stages of the game, last couple of minutes, you're thinking they've just got it over the line. If Bournemouth had managed to hang on just for another few minutes, they'd have gone 6th. Level on points with Chelsea, actually only behind them on goal difference, and ahead of Manchester City. And we're in the middle of January, that's incredible. Past the halfway stage of the season, and for Bournemouth to be above City and level on points with Chelsea, Andoni Iraola's done an incredible job. So the fact that Reece James scores a terrific free kick, and of course it is a terrific free kick, Make no bones about it. Fantastic goal from a player who I think deserves it. He's had a rough time, Reece James, hasn't he? Terrific player. Good to see him back, and hopefully he can build on that and get his fitness back. But yeah, I have got a bit of a soft spot for Bournemouth, so I think I would have liked to see him get the result there in the end. But it wasn't to be. It was a good point for him still, away at Stamford Bridge. Really tough place to go, of course, for any side. And something else we didn't talk about in this game, of course, something you very, very rarely see, was the referee going to the monitor. He got sent to the monitor by the VAR official, went to take a look at, I think it was a foul by Brooks on Cucurella, goes to take a look at it and cards Brooks, which I thought that was really unusual. I've never seen that before. In fact, I thought that was against the rules. He hadn't booked the player. I thought it could only be a red card. So the fact that he's gone, maybe it was because he hadn't seen it. I'm not entirely sure what the regulations are. But the VAR thought it might have been a red. Cucurella was running. I think Sanchez has the ball in his hands. The ball's about to be kicked upfield. And obviously it looks like the ref and various others have turned to run back up the pitch. And I think Brooks sort of cuts across the path of Cucurella. There'd been a bit of a spat between those two earlier in the game. We know Cucurella's maybe got a track record of histrionics, hasn't he, being a bit dramatic, but Brooks cuts across Cucurella. This is off the ball as all the players are running back up the pitch. And it looks like, I mean, admittedly I've only seen it once, but it kind of looks like there's a clothesline type of effect on Cucurella. I don't think he gets clobbered, he doesn't get smashed in the face or anything, and he drops to the floor like a sack of spuds, holding his face and rolling round as you'd expect. And yeah, the official gets sent to the screen, has a look at it, decides it's not a red, but still books David Brooks. I thought that was interesting. It's the first time I've seen that. For Chelsea, it wasn't to be, of course. They remain 2 points ahead of Manchester City. They're sat in 5th. 2 points ahead of Manchester City, 1 point just behind Newcastle, who were in 4th, and 4 points behind Nottingham Forest in 3rd. And, you know, this title challenge that we were talking about with Chelsea is just kind of disintegrated, and it looks like now they've got a battle for top 4. And, you know, they face Wolves on Monday Night Football at Stamford Bridge. That's going to be a really tough one as well. For Bournemouth, great point on the road. They'll be absolutely made up with it. And obviously they have the ultimate test of their European credentials this weekend. They've got the early kickoff at St James's Park. What a fixture that's likely to be. Newcastle against Bournemouth, 12:30 Saturday. I'll be doing a watch along of it if you're interested. And I've got to say, I'm absolutely fascinated by how that one's going to play out. Newcastle banging form, of course. Bournemouth too, you know, 2 teams really up for it. They've got to go to St James's Park and get something. This is a really, really big test for them. And, you know, we'll see. I'm really interested to see how that one plays out. So next up was West Ham 3, Fulham 2. And got this one wrong, didn't we? Called very few goals in this one, I think I said. I did think it was going to be a tight game, and to be honest, it turned out to be that way. I thought Fulham played really well for most of the first half. I think they hit the bar, was it once or twice? They played really well for half hour or so, and then all of a sudden, West Ham found themselves 2-0 up. I think it was the first one Fulham just put on a plate. Was it Pereira, I think, just basically passes it. They're messing around at the back, and Fulham, you know, of West Ham's 3 goals, Fulham gifted, absolutely gifted 2 of them. Just messing around with it at the back, trying to play out from the back. Leno, you know, the ball comes out to Pereira. Pereira passes it across the face of goal. Cardinal sin. And Soler with a great finish puts them 1-0 up. Then it's a counter-attacking goal from West Ham. Ball gets pulled back from Wan-Bissaka. Souček knocks it in. And West Ham find themselves 2-0 up at half-time, having played, you know, just okay, really. I think actually Fulham were the better side. But Fulham come out second half, and as you expect them to, they kick on. They make it count in the end. Ball in from I think it's from the left-hand side, curling in towards goal, and Jimenez running across. Just gets a touch. I don't even know, actually, if he does get a touch on it, but it beats Fabianski, goes in, and it's 2-1. And again, you're thinking, right, Fulham now will kick on, and you would expect them to press and make it difficult for West Ham and perhaps get the equaliser. Again, Fulham messing about at the back. Danny Ings pressing absolutely tigerish up front, just chasing down. He's so good at that. I love Danny Ings so much as a striker. Chasing shadows, chases Leno down, wins the ball back, and it's Paqueta just has an empty net to pass it into. Pretty much the same as Soler in the first half. So, you know, if you're Marco Silva, you're absolutely raging at your back line for just giving up 2 goals really, really easily. And it you know, as a contest then, it's almost over because West Ham are 3-1 up and you're thinking, well, they're pretty much in control. However, Fulham do make it really uncomfortable for them. Again, they go up the other end and they get another goal, pretty much identical to their first. Ball whips in from the left. Jimenez running across it. I think he goes for a header this time, and again it beats Fabianski. I think the crosser is actually the goal scorer again. And then in the final few minutes, Fulham pushing and chasing to get that equaliser, and they came so close. Adama Traore, I think it was, just skying one from just inside the 6-yard box. But yeah, it could have been 3-3 in the end. I mean, I don't think it was a 3-3 game, to be honest. I mean, it didn't really feel like there was loads and loads and loads of chances for both teams. It just felt like a game that was littered with errors. Fulham were just really poor and sloppy at the back. I actually thought Fulham, for large parts, were the better team. So performance-wise, you'd have to look at it and say Marco Silva might be a bit encouraged, let's say, at the way in which Fulham responded to being down. They kept coming back. If you're Graham Potter, you just made up that it's a win. It's your first win as West Ham manager. To do it at home as well is really nice, really important for them. And obviously that then just drags them away from that. I don't think they were ever really in the conversation for relegation this season, but it does just move them well out of that now. West Ham, of course, out of both domestic cups, so not a massive amount really left to play for this season. I think it's just about them building some consistency and getting that rhythm ahead of what is likely to be a really big summer for them, both holding on to their key players, because I'm sure people will be coming for the Paquetas, the Bowens, definitely the Kudus. Those types of players will be very much in demand, and I do think West Ham have been underperforming for some time now, before Graham Potter, of course. So I think it'll be really important just that they can show that they can move back up the table and get back in amongst those European positions, because that's certainly where they're aspiring to be. For Marco Silva, you'll be disappointed, because Fulham were, not all that long ago, on the cusp of those European places, sort of like where Bournemouth are now. And they've just fallen away, haven't they? They're 1 win in 7 after this game, and it's, included in those games are some really difficult ones, don't get me wrong. Miraculously, the win that they got in that 7 game run was away at Chelsea. Really, really big win. They've drawn with Liverpool away at Anfield. They drew at home to Arsenal, of course. Big points, big victories. But then they're also drawing at home to Ipswich, drawing at home to Southampton. Even this game, West Ham, you would have earmarked as one where they could get at least a point, get something out of the game. They just need to get themselves back together again at the back. It just looks like they've maybe lost their shape. They've lost a little bit of that organisation that they had at the back. They can score goals. There's absolutely no problems. They can cause opposition defences nightmares going forward. I think they attack really, really well as a team, as a unit, even if they, you argue they don't necessarily have terrific individuals in that final third. And it will only take a couple of wins or a couple of results going their way to get them back in and amongst those European conversations again. They're 4 points behind Bournemouth now, 5 points behind the likes of Villa, Manchester City. And you would expect those teams to maybe pull away from Fulham, and it'd be disappointing, I think, if Fulham don't really make a good fist of it and carry it into the latter stages of the season. Even if you don't think that they make those European places in the end, and personally I don't think they do. I don't think they've quite got the tools that, say, a Villa or a City certainly have, and even Bournemouth, I think, just have a little bit more in the locker than Fulham. But I think Fulham can hold their own and can make the fight last a little bit longer than this. We're still only halfway through the season. They've got a really big trip to Leicester coming up this weekend, and I think that has to be 3 points for Fulham. They have to be looking at that as a game where, do you know what, if we do want to kick on and get back in amongst that conversation, we've got to go there and win. This is a game that they have to take 3 points in. So that'll be a really interesting one, because again, you'd have to say the same for Leicester. For Leicester, if you want to stay in the Premier League, you've got to win this one. Fulham at home is a game that's one of the few winnable ones for Leicester in the Premier League. So that'll be a really interesting fixture. For West Ham fans, for Graham Potter, they've had a really rough run of fixtures. And next up for West Ham, it doesn't really get any easier, because they've got Palace. Palace at home. Palace are flying. Palace are in the midst of an unbeaten streak. So it'll be a really, really difficult game, and one that, again, you'd have to say Graham Potter will be looking at and saying, it's winnable, it's certainly winnable, but a very, very difficult fixture, that one. Palace are really good, very good on the road as well. So, intrigued to see how that one plays out. So next up, Nottingham Forest 1, Liverpool 1. I said in the preview that I thought Nottingham Forest would take the lead, and then it would be an onslaught of sort of 60, 70 minutes of Liverpool, chasing for the equaliser. I didn't quite get the timings right, but I did think that was exactly how it would play out, purely because Liverpool have been such slow starters. Under Jurgen Klopp, and under Arne Slot to a degree, we've not been straight out of the traps. We were guilty of a slow start against Newcastle, certainly against Manchester United recently, and again, it was the same here. In the first half, Liverpool were dreadful. It looked like, Alexis McAllister, who usually is a really, really surefire thing with his passing, couldn't find a white shirt. He must have thought we were playing in red. He could not find a white shirt. I did think that this is going to sound like a massive excuse, but I did think the pitch was quite bobbly and it suited Nottingham Forest because they were first to every single second ball. It wasn't necessarily a pitch conducive to playing nice, slick, smooth passing football. Forest take the lead, absolutely deserved to at half-time. They should have maybe even been more than one up. But Chris Wood, what a wonderful finish. Liverpool sloppy in midfield, giving the ball away. And it just seemed like 2 passes and they were in. Straight in behind, and a phenomenal finish from Chris Wood. Straight across Alisson into the far corner. And Forest are 1-0 up. And again, deserved to be in front. And then Liverpool come out in the second half, and I thought we looked a lot better. We looked a lot brighter. You could tell maybe Slot had given some of the players a kick in, and you really need to up your game here. Obviously, nothing really happens. I can't remember any real chances before Diogo Jota comes on the pitch. And a big part of that, I thought, was because Liverpool were playing without a focal point in attack. This front three of Salah, Diaz, Gakpo. Diaz and Gakpo are both left-sided. They're both wingers. They're not centre-forwards. And they both, whenever I saw them in the game, certainly for the first hour, it felt like they were always on the left-hand side. So there was never really anyone in the box causing problems for Murillo, for Milenkovic, both of whom were terrific, by the way. And all that changed as soon as Diogo Jota comes on. Diogo Jota comes on, of course, first touch for Tsimikas, first touch for Jota. Has that ever happened before in a Premier League game? It's so surprising, but cross in, great cross in, Jota, bang, fantastic header, 1-1, Liverpool. Probably not full value for the draw at that point, but, they were level, and however you dress it up, they were level. But then from that moment on, as soon as Liverpool go 1-1, it's just the Matt Sells show, as far as I'm concerned. Liverpool have 2 cleared off the line. Matt Sells makes 2, maybe even 3 fantastic saves. Jota should score, I would say, at least one of them. And Nottingham Forest ride their luck from that moment on. There was sort of, I think, 25 minutes or so after Jota scores remaining in the game, and Liverpool don't make it count. Liverpool should have got that second. They really should have pushed on and got the second. Forest didn't really do an awful lot to hurt Liverpool on the counter-attack in the second half, but they defended very, very well. And in the end, you've got to say that's exactly what Forest have done all season, and they deserved their point. It was a good point. They've taken 4 points from Liverpool this season. Fair play to Forest. They're exactly where they should be in the league based on all the performances this season, and absolute credit to Nuno Santo. They remain in third, of course, in those Champions League places. They're 4 points ahead of Chelsea in fifth. It's quite the cushion that they've got, and they've got Southampton coming to the City Ground this weekend, which, you have to say, looking at where they are in the table, anything other than a win for Forest here is a disaster. If they want to push on and be in those Champions League places, Southampton at home is meat and drink. That's your 3 points every single day of the week. So this is a really big test for Forest, because I feel like they've been a fantastic counter-attacking side that affords the opposition a lot of the ball. They're not going to be able to sit off against Southampton. And to be honest, at time of recording, Southampton have just put in a terrific performance at Old Trafford. A performance that, even though it ended in a defeat, I have to say it's just changed my perception of Southampton a little bit. And, there might be an outside chance they could cause Forest some trouble in that game. So it's a potential banana skin for Forest. They have to be very, very careful. Forest, of course, still on that run of 1 defeat in 9. 7 wins within that, of course. So you'd have to say firm favourites for that Southampton game, and some would argue firm favourites for a top 4 spot in Champions League football next season. For Liverpool, I guess it was a little bit of disappointment that we didn't get the job done in the end. I thought the second half performance probably warranted a winning goal. Obviously, Arsenal winning the North London derby reduces that gap at the top to just 4 points. Obviously, Liverpool have their game in hand. But what looked like a comfortable lead at the top, almost an unassailable lead at the top, is now just looking a little bit less so. difficult trip to Brentford coming up, of course, for Liverpool this weekend, and I've got to say I'm a little bit nervous about that one, especially in the context of them picking up a point against Manchester City and coming back from 2 goals down. They just don't know when they're beaten, Thomas Frank's side, and it's going to be a very, very interesting, almost nerve-wracking one for me to watch. I don't expect Liverpool will make it easy. I certainly don't think it'll be a comfortable victory, but hopefully it's a victory for me at least. So next up was Everton 0, Aston Villa 1. Not quite the homecoming that David Moyes had hoped for. Now, I watched this game and I've got to say that I thought it was a really bad sign for Everton that they didn't look all that different. Admittedly, he's only had a short time to work with the players. I understand that. However, ultimately, it's still the same group of players. I don't think it was a particularly good game of football to watch. And obviously, coming to Goodison, Everton make it very, very difficult for opposing teams. And historically, have always done so. But there was a lot less energy and a lot less sort of that up and at 'em feeling. And they did limit them to quite few chances in the first half. In fact, the best chance that Villa had was kind of created by, I think it was Ashley Young, an underhit back pass back to Jordan Pickford, and Ollie Watkins ran onto it, probably should score, hits it just wide. And there was a couple of other half chances for Villa. I think Tielemans puts one just wide in the penalty area. Couple of half chances, and then Everton get you'd have to say their big chance in the first half, certainly. Dominic Calvert-Lewin gets into a good position, gets into the area, but the ball gets stuck under his feet a little bit. He does look like he's lacking confidence, of course. Understandable for a player that's scored, 11 in his last 71 Premier League games. So he's definitely short on confidence, but he manages to bobble it past Martinez. It is goal bound, but it's just trickling, and in the end there's a Villa player stood on the line who effectively just puts his foot on it and calmly passes it away. So there wasn't a huge amount of chances for Everton in the first half. In the second half, again, you could say Everton caused themselves their own problems. I think it was Branthwaite pushes out too much and Decore getting a bit of a muddle. Ball gets played through and there's just a chasm in defence. Ollie Watkins runs straight through, slots it past Pickford, 1-0 Villa. From that moment on, I never really felt like Everton troubled Villa a massive amount. They had one chance very near the end where I think it's Lindstrom knocks the ball across and Calvert-Lewin's in a very good position. Should certainly hit the target. Maybe should score, but should certainly hit the target. And he skies it, and again, it's evidence of a striker that's lacking in confidence. So you have to feel for Everton, and I really do worry where the goals are going to come from this season for them, unless they go out and can get themselves. Certainly, they need one. They definitely need one, but I would argue they probably need 2 or even 3, certainly in that final third. Just a few extra bodies to freshen things up, because the players that they've got at the moment are going to really struggle to get the goals that they need. In 20 Premier League games this season, Everton have only scored in 8 of them. That's 12 games where they've not managed a goal. That's very telling. That is very, very telling. And, you can only chalk that up to Sean Dyche so much. Ultimately, I think it's the players that he's got to work with, and I felt huge sympathy for Dyche then. I still feel sympathy for Dyche now, and I think Moyes has got a massive, massive task on his hands. And you'd have to say, if you're David Moyes, you'd be putting your foot down at this point and saying to the owners, listen, we really, really have to get at least one striker, or certainly a wide player. We need some more pace in that attack. We have to have something going forward, because otherwise you are basically pushing all your chips onto that defence and hoping that Jordan Pickford, Jared Branthwaite, James Tarkowski can just hold firm at the back and give you enough clean sheets that you'll pick up enough points across the season. And that's a big gamble. That's a very, very big gamble. I still don't expect Everton will go down, by the way. I really don't. I expect that Everton get out of this. But it's a massive game coming up for Everton. This Sunday they play Spurs at Goodison Park. Another team that's down there. Another team that desperately needs a win. And yeah, another fixture that neither of those teams can afford to lose. So a really interesting one. For Villa, it wasn't a vintage performance, but it was a really, really big 3 points to get them back in amongst those European places. They are level on points with City now, of course, 2 points behind Chelsea in 5th, 3 points behind Newcastle in that important Champions League spot, and that's who they'll be eyeing up, isn't it? That's exactly who they'll be chasing down. They've got a really tough trip to the Emirates this weekend. Arsenal looking a little bit out of sorts, you'd have to say, recently. Not quite themselves going forward. I don't necessarily think they were vintage themselves in the North London derby. And that's a really interesting one again. You'd have to say Villa going to Arsenal. It's a 5:30 kickoff on Saturday night. Who could pick a winner in that one? So next up, Leicester City 0, Crystal Palace 2. We thought this one would be an away win. We thought Palace would get the job done in the end, and so it proved to be. I just couldn't shake the feeling that Ruud van Nistelrooy hasn't really improved Leicester. I just don't think that they've done enough unless they get something in this January transfer window. Especially, I think, in that final third. It wasn't a game of high quality. It just appeared, at least to me, that Palace took their chances and took them at the right moments, and there weren't many chances in the game. And Leicester, for all the huffing and puffing, couldn't quite get one over the line to make a difference, and goals change games, as we say. I just think if you're Ruud van Nistelrooy, you're really disappointed that you're not seeing more from your players. This is the 6th defeat in a row for Leicester. It's the 9th defeat in their last 11 games. For me, it really wouldn't be surprising if we saw Ruud van Nistelrooy leave Leicester before the end of the season. Whether that's of his own accord or Leicester decide to make a change again. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe Leicester have quietly accepted the fact that actually we're probably preparing for the Championship at this point, and that is exactly how it feels. If they don't go out there in January and make some really, really significant signings, I think particularly in the final third, because they're just not getting enough goals. That again is a problem for Leicester, not getting enough goals. I mean, it's a problem for most teams down the bottom, but it does feel particularly prominent for Leicester that they're not quite able to get goals and hurt teams in the final third. You look at the league table and things can change very quickly in football, of course. They're only 2 points away from safety in the Premier League. So, one win and it all looks very different, but it just feels like that win is so far away for Leicester. Leicester welcome Fulham this weekend, and if you're Ruud van Nistelrooy, there's not many winnable games in the Premier League, but you're probably looking at that and saying, lads, that's probably one we have to be picking up 3 points in. Certainly a point, they need something. I think if they get another defeat in that game, it's almost unmanageable for Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think he would have to be tempted to walk away because it's clear that he's not making a difference. Unless the board have promised him signings, or perhaps promised him signings to help them come back up and reshape the squad in the Championship. I have no idea, of course, we don't know. But I do think a big performance is necessary for Leicester this weekend. I mean, a result, of course. I think they'd take a win playing badly at this point. But a big performance is absolutely necessary. We have to see Leicester improve. If they're going to get themselves out of this position, we've got to see more from them. And this is a really big opportunity. Fulham at home this weekend. Big chance for them to prove doubters wrong. For Palace, it was a really, really big win, a really big 3 points, because it does just take them now 7 points clear of Everton and probably out of that relegation conversation now, you'd have to say. And it continues that run of form that they've been on. 1 defeat in their last 10 Premier League games, 3 wins in their last 4. They go to West Ham in the next game week, and you'd have to say again, Graham Potter, new manager bounce at West Ham. They've just got a win at Fulham. Palace now looking 3 wins in 4. They're looking confident. What a fixture that's shaping up to be. Who could call a winner in that one? Again, it's a really, really tight one to call. I think Palace will go there with real confidence now. Mateta's on fire. They've got Eze and Sarr working really well in tandem. Lacroix and I think Gay at the back have been brilliant as a partnership. You've got to say, I think Oliver Glasner's done a terrific job at Palace, helping them get out of that position. So I'm really, really impressed by the work he's done, and he seems to be improving Palace. And he'll be hoping that they can go to West Ham and get something. So next up, Newcastle 3, Wolves 0. The Alexander Isak show continues. That's 8 games in a row that he's scored in for Newcastle now. I think is it a club record? Just absolutely on fire. But again, I have to say, credit to Wolves, I don't necessarily think that this was a 3-0 performance. It was the same story as the Nottingham Forest game for the Wolves fans, and they'll be tearing their hair out because they're flying forward and creating some terrific chances, and they're just not finishing them. They're just not getting the look, the breaks, it's hitting the bar. Hit the bar a couple of times in this one, hit the bar a couple of times against Forest. But I feel like if you're a Wolves fan, you have to be encouraged by the performances, albeit not the results just yet, and maybe the results will follow. You have to expect that they will. Personally, I've no horse in the race, but I think Wolves have been playing quite well and perhaps haven't been getting the rub of the green in recent games. The challenge for Vitor Pereira is that their next 5 games are about as tough as it gets in the Premier League in terms of fixtures. They travel to Chelsea on Monday Night Football. They then welcome Arsenal and Aston Villa to Molineux before the international break, and then heading into February they've got trips away to Liverpool and Bournemouth. And you'd have to hope, if you're a Wolves fan, that going into those sort of games that the performances will continue, but maybe with the pressure off, the results will come and you might be able to pick up a few points to get you further up the table. But it's a difficult run of fixtures and you have to feel for Vitor Pereira, because I think they should have got more from the last couple of games that they've had. For Newcastle, the run continues. That's 9 wins on the spin in all competitions. Just incredibly clinical in front of goal. They actually had the same number of big chances as Wolves in this game. I mean, first goal, he gets a big slice of luck, massive deflection, but as a striker, you take it, of course. Second goal, great movement, albeit the Wolves' defence parted like the Red Sea, left Alexander Isak wide open, basically on the penalty spot. Good finish to make it 2-0. And then on the counter-attack, causing all sorts of problems, and he finds Anthony Gordon in the box, makes it 3-0. And, it's game, set, match. And if you're a Newcastle fan, you've got to be increasingly confident of making those Champions League places for next year. And the way you're playing as well, you're not even looking down necessarily. I mean, yes, of course, we've got City, Chelsea, Aston Villa hot on their tails, and they'll all be thinking that they can make it there too. But if you're Newcastle, you've got to be looking up. You've got to be looking at Forest 3 points ahead. Arsenal just 5 points ahead. I mean, Liverpool, dare I say, 9 points ahead. And in this winning run that Newcastle have had, they've had some pretty big scalps. Aston Villa dispatched, Manchester United, Tottenham, Arsenal in the Cup, of course. But I have to say, I am absolutely fascinated to see how they get on against Bournemouth this weekend. It's the early game. It's a Saturday 12:30, first game in the game week. It's going to be a massive game for both sides. Again, you'd have to say, the way both teams are playing, incredibly tough to call. So next up was that huge North London derby. Arsenal 2, Tottenham Hotspur 1. Big win for Arsenal. And this was always likely to be a fascinating watch, and many people expected Spurs to cause Arsenal problems, and they did. They just weren't clinical enough in front of goal, and that was the real difference. Arsenal somehow were 2-1 up at half-time from one shot on target, and all the praise that had been given to the young goalkeeper that had come in, Kinski, in the games beforehand. I mean, I talked about Kinski in my match preview as being someone that's come in and really settled that Spurs back line down. He was dreadful. Really looked out of sorts, really overwhelmed with the occasion. I think he should have done better with both goals, to be honest. He got lost in a crowd for the first goal, the own goal from Solanke, and then he should be saving that one from Trossard. I think the second goal, the goal that eventually wins it. It's really difficult for Spurs because they've got to look at it and go, well, they're missing their entire back line. No Udogie, no Romero, no Van der Ven, obviously no Vicario in goal. They're established defence. And that's why everyone's had such sympathy with I say everyone. I've certainly had sympathy with Ange Postecoglou over this time, where they've maybe not quite been getting the results they should. And above all else, I think if you're Ange Postecoglou, you're looking at that performance from Archie Gray at centre-back, a young player playing out of position in a sort of patchwork defence, and You've got to be proud of your team. Forget the fact that it's a North London derby. Forget the fact that it's Arsenal away, a really, really top team. Spurs fans obviously will bemoan the fact that the corner, the first goal, should have been a goal kick. But that's just, it happens in football. You have to accept sometimes they go your way, sometimes they don't. Spurs, you'd hope, will get the rub of the green next week. I thought Arsenal were much better in the second half. They came out, they were much more composed, a lot more control. And really exerted their authority on the game. They had a few more chances as well. Probably should have gone further in front. And, I think overall, maybe on the balance of play, the 3 points was deserved. Spurs, they'll probably be disappointed that they didn't make the lead count. You know, they kind of threw it away in the end. Spurs find themselves in 14th in the table, and a relegation battle really wasn't on the cards this season, and I still don't think it is. But they are just 7 points clear of their next opponents, Everton, a team that undoubtedly are in a relegation battle this season. And that's a game they have to go to Goodison and win. Goodison, you know, it's an old trope, we say it all the time. It's a tough place to go. David Moyes, new manager. You know, Everton, for all their faults this season, they'll put Spurs under pressure, under real pressure at Goodison Park this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see how Ange Postecoglou's side deal with it. For Arsenal, this was a massive 3 points, aside from the fact that it was the North London derby and it was Tottenham. You know, this takes them back within just 4 points of Liverpool. And yes, they've played a game more than Liverpool, and that's important to mention. I don't think the performance was terrific from Arsenal, but then again, it didn't need to be. 3 points is all that matters in games like this, and they got it. They got it over the line, and now they go into a huge game, another huge game at the Emirates this weekend. It's the 5:30 kickoff. Aston Villa, another team that's on the cusp of the Champions League places that can't afford to be dropping points. You know, and Aston Villa are in a great run of form at the moment. That's 4 games unbeaten for them, 3 wins on the spin. It's going to be a tough game for Arsenal, that one. So next up, Ipswich 0, Brighton 2. And I've got to say, I thought Ipswich would get more from this one. I actually thought they performed quite well against Brighton. Again, for large parts, they had some really good chances, created some shots. Admittedly, most of them from distance, but I thought the general play was quite good. Brighton didn't really trouble Ipswich for large parts of the game. And then all of a sudden, you know, they carve one half chance in the second half. And Christian Walton really won't want to see it back, because the shot from Mitoma, it's kind of a P-roller, and it just goes straight underneath his arms. It's a poor one from the goalkeeper, and it's a big goal and a big moment. It really just shifts all that momentum back towards Brighton at a really crucial point in the game. Now, Ipswich might argue that Brighton should have been down to 10 men, and I've got to say I was a little bit surprised at the outrage over the João Pedro incident. I don't want to see red cards for that given in football. Yes, I think it was a yellow card. It was absolutely a yellow card. If you watch it back, he's running and chasing the goalkeeper down, and I think it's one of them where it looks to me like he's sincerely trying to block the clearance from the goalkeeper, like he's maybe trying to get a deflection to knock it back towards goal. That's what it looks like to me anyway. I don't think he's trying to hurt Walton, because he turns his body away as he's admittedly flying in mid-air, so it's erratic, it's a yellow card, it's a caution all day. If that's given as a red card against your club, you are raging. So I don't want to see red cards given for that in modern football. I want to see a higher threshold for red cards. You know, it'd be different if João Pedro maybe had gone in with his elbow or something. Then I might have said, okay, possibly a red card, because it seems like there's intent there. I just don't think it was. I think it was clumsy more than it was intentional. And obviously I can only speak for myself, but I would really like us to get back to a style of officiating where there's maybe a necessity factor to send players off, to remove players from the pitch. It seems silly to me that we're talking about red cards for that sort of a collision on a football pitch now. It winds me up a little bit, to be honest. Bizarrely, it wasn't actually Ipswich fans that I saw calling for that to be a red card. I haven't seen any Ipswich fans up in arms about that decision. You know, and I don't think you can pin Ipswich losing the game on that moment, that decision from the referee. Ipswich lost the game because Christian Walton had a moment that he'll look back on and say, I probably should have done better there. But it was a really big win for Brighton, that their first win in 9 Premier League games, going back to, I think it was November. And that moved them up to 9th in the table, ahead of Fulham, you know, maybe on the tails of Bournemouth. If they get their act together, if they start picking up some wins now, they might start moving themselves into that conversation for the European places again. You know, they've got to go to Old Trafford this Sunday, which, you know, United are a little bit out of sorts at the moment. They've had a couple of big performances against Liverpool and Arsenal. Obviously a big win against Southampton last night, but the performance was dreadful. So I don't think Brighton will go there with any fear. They'll go there thinking they can get a result against this United side. For Ipswich, it'll be a disappointing result. I think they probably would have earmarked this as one where they get something, get at least a point, because next up they've got Manchester City at Portman Road, and although City have been out of sorts this season, this is one where you'd expect their quality to tell. But again, no easy games in the Premier League. Ipswich beat Chelsea at Portman Road not that long ago, so, you know, you never know. So next up, Manchester United 3, Southampton 1, and That scoreline does not tell the tale of the tape, does it? Southampton battered United. Absolutely battered them. And they should have been far more than 1-0 up. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Opta's criteria is for considering a chance a big chance, but their stats say that Southampton only had one big chance all game. And I've got to say, anyone who watched the game would tell you that that is a gross misrepresentation of what took place on that football pitch. Kamaldeen Sulemana had Man United's defence terrified for at least 75-80 minutes of that game. The guy was skinning Lenny Yoro, who's no slouch by the way, every single time, just knocking it past him and getting in behind that United defence. And it's really puzzling because before Ivan Djuric came in 2024, Kamaldeen Sulemana played a handful of minutes for Southampton. And in one game, he has shown that he can be a real difference maker for him. If he was to play like that between now and the end of the season, he could keep Southampton up. I mean, more to the point, Southampton would probably have other Premier League sides knocking their door down for him. Every time Southampton got the ball to him, particularly in the first half, but also in the second half as well, it was just a total mismatch. He was skinning the fullback every time and causing chaos. It's no exaggeration at all to say that Southampton could have easily been 2 or 3 up going in at half-time. You know, when Ivan Djuric and his players found out the hard way that the Premier League will eat you alive if you don't take your chances. Because as the second half progressed and the game got into that latter stages, those last 15-20 minutes, you just felt United's energy change. Because they've always got a chance at Old Trafford. Because it doesn't matter how out of sorts the players might be, Old Trafford has always been like that, will always be like that. Going into the last 10-15 minutes, it's an absolute nightmare for opposition teams. And in the end, I actually think it's Amad Diallo's mentality that won the day for Man United. Because all game they'd flattered to deceive, they'd get into the final third, they'd either overhit it, underhit it. Nobody was really taking responsibility. And Amad Diallo in the last 10 minutes just picks the ball up and decides to run at the Southampton back line. He gets a bit of a lucky bobble, the ball breaks his way and he finishes it and it's 1-1. And as soon as that went in, I could hear my dad's voice in my head saying, oh, these are going to win it now, aren't they? And so it proved to be, you know, a little bit of quality in the final third this time. I think it was it Ericsson or was it Bruno? One of them dinked the ball over the back line. Amad Diallo runs onto it and just sticks a toe out. And I actually think Ramsdale should do a lot better with this one. He must have rich tea wrists because it just went through his hand. I really thought once you get a hand on that, he should be keeping it out. So disappointing from him. And the third is just gift wrapped, isn't it? I mean, from Harwood Bellis as well. A player that Southampton are really relying on this season. A leader at the back, a good young player. Takes a really heavy touch. Ramsdale stood miles out of his net and Amad pounces on it. You know, you've got to give him credit. Again, it's mentality. He just kept working, and he got his rewards in the end. And I think that's what sets him apart in this Man United side. Not discounting he's got incredible talent as well, of course, but I just think attitude, mentality, it's clear that he's a level above the players around him, and that's making a big, big difference for Man United. But I still think the performance will shock and really annoy Ruben Amorim, because we said in the match preview, didn't we? We thought this was a game where, you know, United have a lot of pressure. They have to win this one. You know, the Arsenal and the Liverpool games, it's all well and good. No pressure. Everyone was expecting them to get beat. They had to win yesterday. They had to win against Southampton. But 82 minutes in, they're 1-0 down. It's maybe a bit too close for comfort. That win moves Man United up to 12th, just behind Brentford and just ahead of West Ham on goal difference. They welcome Brighton to Old Trafford this weekend, and I've got to say, that's going to be another banana skin for Ruben Amorim. It's very, very difficult side to beat, Brighton. You know, unbeaten in the last 5. They picked up a great win at Portman Road, of course. They'll have lots of confidence coming to Old Trafford, and they'll really have a go at United. They will. For Southampton, again, the performance will encourage Ivan Djuric, but there's only so many times you can talk about performance and not points. You know, they remain rooted to the foot of the Premier League table. 10 points, well, effectively 11 points if you consider goal difference from safety. And they've got a trip to Nottingham Forest coming up this weekend. And again, they're going to have to do something in January to try and change things and freshen things up. And for the love of God, keep playing Kamaldeen Sulemana. He might give you a chance. And that's that for Game Week 21. Finally, my player of the week this week goes to, and this is really hard for me to say as a Liverpool fan, Amad Diallo of Manchester United. A hat-trick in 10 minutes to turn the game and win it for Manchester United. It couldn't really be anyone else, could it? Thanks again for watching, and remember, if you like watching this stuff, if you're a football dad like me, if you're a football nerd like me, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, all the good stuff. It's mega, mega appreciated. You can find me on TikTok, I'm over on Twitter as well, and thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.